The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Today, 2020 NFL DraftKings Showdown strategy and some picks for the opening night. Texans at Chiefs DraftKings Showdown contest. If you out there want to help out the show, you smash that like button. Give me your favorite captain's play for the Thursday night opener in the DraftKings Showdown contest. Also, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, and if you rate it 5 stars, I'll be greatly appreciating that. That would be very nice. If you do, you want to leave a review, even better. That would be fantastic. If you've missed out on anything else from the show, and so far this week, we got a ton. Betting strategy, DraftKings strategy, spread picks, week one rankings update, and then we'll have DraftKings picks update again. Then live on Sunday morning, 10 a.m. with Brad Evans, taking your questions, updating everything. Then back live Monday morning with Chris Meany and Gary and Thorne, recapping the week and getting to the waiver wire. Maybe some look-aheads towards the bets into week 2. Plus, there's a bunch of U.S. Open stuff coming up. There's a major in golf next week, too. A lot is going on Mayo Media Network. So much that I can't cover it all. So what I've done this year is take some creators that I like, solid people in the DraftKings Showdown, specifically industry, and I want to introduce you to them right now. They're going to be walking me through the strategy, walking me through the picks, and you're going to be able to find their videos up on Mayo Media Network and find their content on their own platform. So let's introduce the first one coming up, Justin Freeman. You can find him at cptspot.com, CPT Spot YouTube channel, which I recommend everyone go subscribe to right now. And he's here. What's going on, my man? Thank you for being here.
I'm living the dream, and I'm really thrilled and honored that you refer to me as solid. You know, that's quite a compliment. I am definitely a solid contributor to the showdown space. Not elite. I'm maybe replacement level, but I'm solid. I'm a guy you feel comfortable taking that advice from.
So you're going to be able to find all Justin's showdown picks and previews for the DraftKings slate for the Monday night football games. Those will be scheduled to be released on Sunday, so you get the entire 2 days. I mean, you're probably not going to watch it during football games, but after it's over, you're like, I lost all my money. I got to go chase it on Monday Night Showdown. Boom, it'll be there, ready for you up on Mayo Media Network. And introducing from FTNDaily.com. Also, if you subscribe to the football package for the year at FTNDaily.com or FTNBets.com within the next week using promo code MAYO for a discount, you screenshot that to me on Instagram, on Twitter, you email the Pat Mayo Experience at gmail.com, and you show me that you've bought the package, and a few of you lucky people out there who have purchased it will get your money back and get to keep the entire package for the entirety of the football season. We have David Jones, Tenacious D. What's going on, my man?
Hey, Pat, what's up? We might even be able to throw in a couple FTN dad hats for whoever wins that package. We have some extras laying around, but man, I'm thrilled. Football's finally back. They told us it might not happen. It's going to happen. We're going to get a full season. We're going to get a Super Bowl champion. We're going to win some showdowns. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem. David is going to be contributing the Thursday night DraftKings video up on Mayo Media Network. So everyone, just whenever you see those videos, smash the like, go sub to Justin's YouTube channel. The more you can help everyone out here. That's one thing I really wanted when I launched Mayo Media Network, was to find good creators in the space, people that do certain things much better than I do, and really be able to enhance that product and be able to push people back to their channels too, because it's really cool that they're going to do this, at least for the football season. We'll see. Maybe, David, we can get you on basketball too. I don't do basketball, but I hear you're quite good.
Yeah, we've got a couple more weeks left of basketball, so yeah, I'll definitely come back on. Appreciate it.
All right, and you can check him out at ftndaily.com if you want to check out that basketball content. But we're here to talk NFL Showdown strategy for the 2020 season. I guess you could apply it to next season and the season before unless the rules change, but this is what it is. So we'll start with you, David. If you're just starting Showdown for the first time, there's the captain spot, there's the other flex positions. Is there any sort of like rules that you go into everything with when you think about it? Like, I want to take 4 guys from this team, 2 from this team, or vice versa. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Do I take kickers and defenses? Like, how do you differentiate your teams to try to get to the top?
Yeah, so the big thing for me with these showdown slates is correlation. So a lot of people will just look at the box score and try and put in, the averages of all the guys that have been scoring the past few weeks. and make mistakes. So like if you were to put 2 running backs and a quarterback from the same team on your showdown slate, there's no way you're going to win because the running backs aren't throwing passes to the running backs. You don't have a wide receiver for the quarterback to throw the ball to. It doesn't make any sense. It's not going to win. You have to really correlate your play. So if you want to do something like play a running back from one side, you might want to go get the wide receivers and the quarterback from the other team. Or if you have a running back, add the defense in too from that same team, because those tend to correlate well. Because if you're getting a lot of stops, you might be winning the game, meaning that the running back's going to have the ball, be trying to take it up the middle, burn out the clock, a lot of stuff like that. So you just, once you make your team, you need to look it over, make sure that everything you've done made sense. And if it doesn't, then you need to start over because it's not a winning lineup.
We are missing one member of the team here. We tried to get Colin Drew over at Daily Roto to join us because he's like the goat of Showdowns, the guy who wins all the fucking money. Leave some for the rest of us, Colin, if you're watching. But he always told me that try to tell a story with your lineup that if the story actually plays out, which it probably won't because, I mean, people bet 50-50 games on football and are completely wrong. So telling a smart story about 6 player props that intersect with one another is even harder, but hey, you win like $1 million if you win. Justin, is that how you approach this? Is, hey, if the Chiefs are going to score a bunch of points, I need them to do it through these 3 guys on a Thursday or these 4 guys on a Thursday, and then if that happens, they jump out to a big lead, I'll need these guys to bring it back with on the Texans. Is that how you try to tell yourself a story?
Yeah, telling a story, that's just great general advice and overall for building showdown lineups, because let's face it, we're probably not emphasizing cash games when we're talking about playing the showdown contest. We're interested in these top heavy, large field GPPs. We want to throw the $10 into the main event there and cash it out for big sums of money, a 6 or 7 figure payday. Like that's what makes playing showdown fun. And it all happens over the course of a single game. So like, how can your lineup tell the story? And David hit on some of those ways that we can use correlation. That's going to be a big thing. And, you know, Pat, you hit on some of those things too, which is, you know, you get 6 lineup spots here on DraftKings. You get 1 captain and 5 flex. So there's a lot of different ways that you can attribute salary and attribute those positions to different players on different teams. In other words, you can go unbalanced with a 4-2 combination where you're playing 4 teams from the most likely team to take the victory and 2 from the underdog, or a 5-1 stack. You can get as extreme as that, or you can go balanced with a 3-3 approach. But overall, you're looking to think about things a way that people around you are not thinking about and exploit those edges.
Justin, we'll stick with you. What do you think the most common mistakes that people make in Showdown, besides me being like, oh shit, it's 5 minutes till game time, I forgot to enter a lineup, let me click 6 random people?
Yeah, I think a big thing is people get overexposed to quarterbacks in the captain spot because, like, I think it comes natural to us. Like, we know quarterbacks are high-scoring fantasy positions, and they are. But you think about what happens when a quarterback scores a lot of points. And, you know, we don't get a sample of a 13-game Sunday slate here. We're talking 1 game here. So when that quarterback scores a lot of points, quite frequently, he is outscored by a receiver teammate of his. And that could be a wide receiver. It could be a premier tight end. So we're talking about Chiefs Texans here. We've got a really good tight end to look at in Travis Kelce, who is eligible there for that captain spot consideration. And then the other thing you have to think about there is the salary ramifications. You know, it's going to cost you time and a half to put somebody into that captain spot. So putting Patrick Mahomes in there, the most expensive player on the slate, costs you $18,900 this week. We only get 50K to work with. So putting $18,900 in a single player really limits what you can do. And this is a slate where we're going to be trying to jam in as many playmakers as possible because there are explosive options all over the field. And if we don't bat 1,000, go 6 for 6 here, we're going to lose money.
David, what do you make of taking different styles of players? Like the Texans are kind of full of these guys where, you know, Will Fuller could have 2 catches and that could be worth 40 DraftKings points based on his profile, the same as Brandon Cooks, where you have someone like Randall Cobb, who's kind of a floor player, to be perfectly honest with you. It feels like David Johnson may or may not be a floor player too. Like he's going to get his, you know, solid 12 DraftKings points and be on his way. Maybe he'll score 2 touchdowns and potentially break the slate, but that's more than likely not to happen. Would you go, like, especially if we're talking about these top heavy GPPs, that you always want to take the big play high ADOT player?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously want to get that big play player, but someone like David Johnson, let's just talk about like week 1, what we expect is going to happen with this game. So David Johnson's coming in to be the workhorse, taking over not for DeAndre Hopkins, but he came over in the DeAndre Hopkins trade, and he's a guy that people were down on. So he's going to be a guy that Bill O'Brien wants to feed the ball to here, in my opinion. So he's obviously ahead of Duke Johnson. And one thing about David Johnson, too, is on DraftKings, you get a point per reception. So that's a really big thing people forget, because David Johnson can go out there, catch 4 or 5 balls, and that's already 4 or 5 points. Add that to the receiving yards he gets, call it 40 or 50, you're halfway there. Then if he rushes for 70, 80 yards against a Kansas City team that was bad against the run last season, I mean, you're looking at, you could potentially get 15 points, get him in the end zone. He could be a good captain for you. What you have to make sure you do is get these guys who you know are going to have the ball in the hands, like David Johnson, the Will Fullers, who's going to get a ton of targets with no Hopkins. And then you have to get a little sneaky with a cheap guy, like a Randall Cobb, like even a Duke Johnson, if you're not playing David Johnson, and try and edge people out that way. Because you'll go back to last season, and every time a big GPP every time someone wins a big GPP, it's got a weird little single play in it, like a Byron Pringle, who won someone $100,000 last year from the Kansas City Chiefs, that no one wants to play because he ever hardly touches the ball. But this is football. It's the first game of the season. We don't have any preseason games to watch. We're not exactly sure which players are going to get targeted, which players are going to get in the end zone. We have a good idea, but I mean, knowing these coaches, they're going to have a couple plays drawn up for guys that you don't expect.
So let's stick with you on this one, David. In terms of captain spot, is there a general rule of thumb based on either what the game total might be, how large the favorite is in one team? And are you kind of on board with Justin, where if you do take a quarterback and you do take Patrick Mahomes or even Deshaun Watson on a slate like this, where they're so expensive, like what do you do with the rest of your roster?
On DraftKings, I don't feel that or find that the quarterback typically works in the captain spot, just because it's not necessarily you have to have the guy who scores the most points in the captain spot on DraftKings. That's kind of a common mistake that I've found. You have to find the guy that has the best value, who gets a lot of points, but also allows you to fit the other guys who are getting a ton of points in the lineup. So if you want to jam in the two quarterbacks, you want to get Watson, you want to get Mahomes, well, then you're playing Randall Cobb, you're playing Jordan Akins, and you're playing, Duke Johnson. It's not going to work out because those guys aren't on the field as much. You're going to have to get someone with big play upside, your Will Fuller, maybe your David or your David Johnson, and try and win it that way. Maybe even a Kelsey. But he's priced pretty good this week, but yeah, you need the best value at captain, in my opinion.
Well, Justin, the captain spot, CPT spot on YouTube, youtube.com/CPT spot and CPTspot.com is the name of the game for you. So, when those like random dudes pop up that are like $200 on DraftKings Showdown, and then you'll see people throw them into the captain spot, you should never do that, right?
It's not typically going to work out really well. You want to think about things as far as like projectable volume, like that. Projections have like a certain role in showdown formats. Like it's not a very big part of how we're looking at things, but it does play a part. So we can't just take like some random schlub at $200 and throw them in there. It's just not going to work out. So there's probably a floor in there, but it's going to differ each and every week. And it's going to depend, slate by slate based on who you're going to be able to fit in there. So I think overall, like you do have to consider floor to a certain extent, because I think everybody, and this Houston Kansas City game is like a prime example of everybody wants to chase points. Like this is going to be a shootout game, but like not every game do you need outlier performances from each and every player. Sometimes you just need like a pretty ordinary day from the kicker, and that's what the combinations work in a certain way where that's the way things come together to take down the 6-figure top prize. So just be flexible. Like there's no hard and fast rules. People do get too cute though doing that sort of thing. So you do want some sort of sustainable volume, especially in the captain spot.
Is there any way that you can win this with a single bullet? Because whenever I see like screenshots of people posting that they've won a showdown contest or won 6 figures, 5 figures, they're playing basically 100 to 150 lineups and trying to get as many combinations of these lineups as possible by tightening their core up and just going, boom, they're either going to win a bunch or they're going to lose everything that they have. Do you find like if you were to play one lineup, Justin, in Showdown, you just want to make one solid lineup, you could play it in a cash game, but again, that's not what we're talking about. Let's say, would you enter it in like a higher stakes, smaller tournament, like $100 single entry, something like that, versus just trying to like chuck it out there and try to beat 200,000 people for $1 million?
Yeah, you'd certainly be way better off entering into single entry if you're just going to play one. There's no doubt about it. Like you have to think about what is everybody else doing in this massive 150 entry tournament. And you have to think about duplication and uniqueness. That's going to be a super big thing because if you're playing what appears to you to be a pretty attractive, good looking, solid, well-rounded showdown lineup, I guarantee you with 355,882 other people playing in this thing, somebody else thought of it too. So that means like you say, well, Justin, sure, we'll chop $1 million between two people. But I say, no, you're not chopping $1 million with two people. You're chopping it with 700 people. So you have to be really careful about that. And now all of a sudden your pretty good lineup is now negative expected value. So the math changes on that completely. Meanwhile, flip that script, put it in a single entry with 100 people in it. Now, all of a sudden, you're cooking with grease. You've got something that can work. You can rise to the top of the leaderboard. You can, you're going to be unique. You're going to take down top prize all for yourself. So that's definitely a much better allocation of that.
David, over at ftndaily.com, you can use the SaberSim product over there, along with all of the other DraftKings tools in order to find value. There are projections uploaded to the site. Do you have any tips in using a product like that if you are going to make a bunch of lineups? Like you heard Justin talk about that, once you get on the same page with everyone, you're going to end up being negative EV, even if you're having built a pretty solid roster. If you're playing in one of these giant where they allow, like the $1 million contest where they allow 150 entries, that would you suggest things like, hey, when I have my cap of salary, like leave 200 on the table and see if that just makes me unique?
That's a great rule, and I'm glad you remind me of that. I tell the subs all the time, salary does not matter in showdown slates whatsoever. In fact, if you do spend your entire salary, like Justin said, I mean, you're definitely going to tie some people. If you're just trying to cash, that might be okay, because in these big $1 million contests, there's also a lot of really bad lineups because people are taking shots on receivers that won't even see the field. So you can cash that. But to answer your first question about SaberSim, like some tips I would use on that, it's just still building that script. So you're going to hit optimize and you've got all the players in your pool. You need to take out, you don't need to play two running backs and a quarterback from the same team. You don't need to really play a running back and a quarterback from the same team, I found, unless that running back is catching passes. And that's going to change from week to week depending on how the team calls plays. So you have to be familiar with how these different NFL teams call plays. So you also want to make sure, like, if you're going to play, I usually don't go over 2 wide receivers, maybe 3 max with a quarterback. So if you're spitting out a team that's got 4 wide receivers in it and your quarterback, that's hoping for a little much. You're hoping that these 4 wide receivers each get a touchdown or each, exceed value. It's probably not going to happen. You're probably wishing too much. You need to start narrowing that player pool and trying to tell that script, through your optimizer, and just making sure you don't have plays that aren't going to correlate well. Like, you don't want 4 offensive players going against your defense on the other side, things like that.
Well, I think that some people get caught up and they see some of these winning lineups and they're fucking ridiculous. Like, no one in their right mind would ever come up with this lineup. Like, it has like 2 defenses, a kicker, some guy no one's ever heard of. It's like, oh, it won because Kyle Juszczyk ended up like with 2 1-yard plunges, and all of a sudden that none of the other San Francisco running backs did anything. There's like weird circumstances like that. It'd be like if Showdown existed in the old Packers days and John Kuhn was like available for $400 and everyone just used him. But I think, David, this puts people on a path where they think that's a really smart strategy to do because they saw someone else do it, win $1 million, and think this is very common. It's not common whatsoever, is it?
No, it's not common. And another rule that you've reminded me of, I'm kind of getting back in the feel of things because it's been so long since we've had NFL. But say if you want to try and take a shot on one of those weird cheap guys, like you can look at the Houston Texans 3 wide receivers on the second team. You've got Kiki Kuti, DeAndre Carter, and Kenny Stills. Make a rule where you can't play more than one of those guys on a team because you're just trying to catch a touchdown from one of these second team guys. It's unlikely that 2 second team guys, especially on the Houston Texans, are going to catch a touchdown. So just make sure you're not taking too many shots on your lineups. You're taking maybe 1 shot. And then if you want to take, you have 2 guys that you kind of like that are kind of fringe, just make 2 lineups. Do it that way.
Justin, when you think about ownership when it comes to showdown contest, I would think it's incredibly difficult to predict. But just thinking ahead to the Thursday night game, like you said, putting your quarterback in a captain spot is going to be something that's very popular, especially in a very high projected scoring game like this one. That would you think you could like create a rule for yourself, like, hey, just fade both those guys in the captain spot, and just off the hop, all of a sudden my lineup is looking good. And you have to use one of them in your flex, obviously, or both, depending on it. Like, do you ever build a lineup that doesn't have a quarterback in it? I guess is my question.
Yeah, a zero quarterback strategy is a losing strategy. Like, it's going to be really, really infrequent that you end up with zero quarterbacks, in your lineup. So what I'd encourage you to do, on the other hand, is, think about how many you do need. Like, what are your salary constraints going to allow you to do? How unbalanced do you want to be with your particular lineup? And I think you'll find that there's a lot of ways to get cute without getting like overly cute, where you're just like really cutting down your EV. So, for me, like I said, quarterback is going to be a popular option in the captain. That's even more reason for me to not do it, because receivers tend to outscore quarterbacks during a good game when the quarterback has a good game. And then B, all the ownership's at quarterback. So I want to get away from quarterback in the captain. I want pass catchers in the captain. I want pass catching running backs in the captain there as well. There's a lot of different ways to get there. We're going to take advantage of what we know about DraftKings. It's full PPR scoring. There's 100-yard bonuses. And both those are to the betterment of high profile pass catchers. And that's sort of a feather in the hat of a player like Will Fuller, if you will, that say maybe a Kenny Stills or one of those sort of secondary options would not possess. Can Will Fuller hit the 100-yard bonus and catch several balls? Absolutely. That's well within his range of outcomes. So I think making sure that you have some upside there is going to be critical, and fading ownership. That's all we know about tournaments and how to climb up leaderboards quickly, is to be playing different guys than other people at very key ownership positions. So think about the flex as sort of an independent roster spot from the captain spot. And because that's we're going to get incremental change. We're going to leap forward past people when we have great things happen to us in our captain spot.
Justin, just kind of sticking with you on this one, do you ever look at the game totals for this, or even the team totals from the betting market, and say, oh, you see a game like the Chiefs and Texans projected over 50, you expect a lot of points. Well, let's say it was like Jets and Bills, and it was 38.5 in the game total, and you heard there's going to be like bad weather in Buffalo or something like that. Would that lean you towards just completely blowing everything up and being like, oh, I will use a defense this time, and I will use a kicker in this game because I project it to be low scoring? Or is that off base from what you should actually be trying to do?
Yeah, no, I think defenses and kickers both have a real role in building out good showdown lineups. And, it sort of all depends on how things mesh together. Like, try to get people out of the concept of using specific players and think more about how to use allocations of players. And like, getting back to the quarterback thing for just a second, because I had to pull up this number, only 8.5% of the time last year in DraftKings Showdown slates was a quarterback where there's zero quarterbacks in a lineup. However, we know that in 41% of games, there's at least one defense. And in 56% of 40% of the games, there's at least one kicker. So it's not like we're just we're drawing dead by putting kickers and defenses in there. They have a spot, especially if we're trying to chase top prizes. So the question then becomes, going back to our earlier point, make the lineup tell a story. How can a kicker be a part of the story that you're telling with your lineup? How can a defense be a part of the story that you're telling with your lineup? Because believe it or not, Harrison Butker was in the millionaire winning lineup between Chiefs and Texans last year. Like, would you have liked to have played him? You probably wouldn't have felt good about it going into the game, but just the way the combinations, it's all about combinations. The way the combinations all worked out, he was a great play in the flex, and it all worked out just fine. So, you've got to think about, there are correlations, and then there are rules. Rules are definitive. Correlations are a little bit gray. That means that player A tends to score well when player B tends to score well. But that doesn't mean it always happens that way. So don't box yourself in with hard and fast rules when you don't absolutely have to.
David, do you have anything more to add on the terms of DraftKings Showdown strategy before we get into the game?
Yeah, just, I mean, the big thing is just don't worry about your salary. I mentioned it before. It doesn't matter. Usually the people that win these things leave salary on the table. And don't be scared to take a shot on a weird guy, but don't take a shot on a guy that's you don't think is going to see the field at all. You can go back and look like last year who was getting on the field. I can tell you the Chiefs run it pretty tight with their wide receivers. They're going to let these guys go, but it's the first game of the season. There was no preseason football. Go look at some reports. If you see someone that you think's getting targeted, like maybe, like a Darrell Williams over a CEH, I think that might be a good place to go because people are going to go straight up to Clyde Edwards-Helaire and forget that he might not get every single touch in this game.
All right, let's get into the actual game. Thursday night, kickoff, Texans at Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions in terms of DraftKings salary. The highest priced player on the DraftKings slate for this game, no surprise, is Patrick Mahomes. If you want to make him your captain, it's $18,900. If you want to go to the other side and make Deshaun Watson your captain, it's $17,700. The rest of the top 10 in pricing as a captain, and again, the captain spot is 1.5 times, so a time and a half. Like Justin said earlier, you're working overtime if you're taking one of these guys in your captain spot. It's Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Will Fuller, David Johnson, Brendan Cook, Sammy Watkins, and Mecole Hardman, the caveman, Mecole Hardman. But, you have A.J. McCarron and Matt Moore and, like, the backup quarterbacks in there. I've left them off the graphics because they're not starting, so I don't really care. Unless you're Siege, I suppose, who loves a good backup quarterback from time to time. That's his in. I would recommend not doing that, but, if you follow Siege, then that's got to be your move. David, captain spot, where are you going here, do you think? If you're just playing a lineup or 1 or 2 or 3, or if you're like me, play 1 and then, like I said, 5 minutes before lock, it's like, oh, I'm going to make 10 more.
Yeah, if I'm going to play one lineup, I'm looking for value. I'm looking for a guy who's going to get targeted a lot. I'm looking for a guy who's got a big void to fill with no Hopkins. I'm probably going to go to Will Fuller. So I'm looking at the prices right here, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Kansas City Chiefs priced above Will Fuller, who I feel very confident is going to probably get double-digit targets here. If you look at Hopkins last year, he's getting nearly double-digit targets every game. When he goes out, Fuller does it too. Fuller is going to get targeted in the end zone more than any other wide receiver. I guarantee that. The Houston Texans traded away Hopkins because they knew they had a wide receiver 1 in Will Fuller. I will stand by that. I think he's going to get peppered a ton. I think he gets in the end zone once or twice. And if you have him at captain spot, you need to make sure you have Deshaun Watson down there in one of your flexes. Yeah.
So Justin, if you start your lineup with, now I'm blanking. With Will Fuller. Yeah, with Will Fuller. It's almost like starting your team with Tyreek Hill on the other side in terms of what you're projecting for upside. And Fuller actually makes sense. Cooks is already banged up in this spot. So if there is the deep threat, that Tyreek Hill is the deep threat on the other side. Now, this can go the other way because Will Fuller might pull his hamstring. This is his first route into the game. But is this the type of player that you would be looking at? A cheaper wide receiver who could be the number 1 on his own team in a high-scoring game to be your captain?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it. The word of caution, I think we pretty clearly are going to want to have Patrick Mahomes in this game. Like, despite his high salary, we're going to want him in there. So now by putting Will Fuller in our captain, we're almost at the point where we have to think about playing Deshaun Watson as well. Now, all of a sudden, we're really expensive. So that would be one word of caution. Like, what does that then do to the rest of the team? So when I look at that, I'm thinking about that. Now, one piece, I hate to break news right here on this show, but, it looks like Brandon Cooks did not practice on Tuesday, was downgraded. Seems like he has a quad issue. If that's the case, it's rocket ship season for Will Fuller. Because there was actually some, there's some real chatter about who's the true number 1 there between Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. I'm certainly on team Will Fuller. Sounds like David's on team Will Fuller, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Brandon Cooks could have been a target siphon. Now, if you're telling me I'm probably going to project 2 or 3 more targets for Will Fuller, I'm really, really, really interested in that. And another thing we talked about earlier is, the telling the story and using these betting markets. Well, the Chiefs are favored anywhere between 9 and 10 points in this game. So what does that say about what's most likely to happen in this game? Obviously, is that the Chiefs get out to a lead early, they milk it late, their heavy run game towards the end, while the Texans are playing catch up. Well, who's going to win when they're playing catch up? Will Fuller would be a great, great person to have there in the captain spot. So a lot of different ways you could get there. Just going to have to think really long and hard about how we're going to allocate quarterback salary for the rest of that lineup.
Well, if you go with Fuller as your captain and you have Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, you're now left over with $4,500 left for your remaining 3 spots in your DraftKings lineup for this game. But let's say Cooks is out. Now, he's probably going to end up playing, but let's say he's either hobbled or he's out. Would that, Justin, put Kenny Stills and or Randall Cobb onto your Raiders? Because let's say you have like a gimpy Brandon Cooks. It's probably more reps for Stills as they might split time, or if Cooks is a bit banged up, you might get some extra reps for Kenny Stills, who's more of a vertical threat than someone like Randall Cobb, who is probably in the Kiki Cutie role that we've come accustomed to in this Texans offense and could just be the target monster, especially if they get down, just quick pass to Randall Cobb for 7 yards over the middle. And all of a sudden, he's just piling up receptions, and then maybe he can find the end zone.
Yeah, I think we want to be careful not to overcorrelate on the Houston side. Like when we see a game has a 9.5 point spread, 10 point spread, wherever it's sitting at right this second, we know we're probably going to want more players from the Kansas City side of this thing. So let's be careful about attributing too many roster spots. Like, we get it. There are available targets and they could be cheap, but let's not go overboard here. We want to save some money for Patrick Mahomes pass catchers too. And, David hit on this earlier, but Darrell Williams is a great way that we could probably take advantage of that projected game script, which is, we're going to be hammering the ball home late with the run game fourth quarter for Kansas City, more than likely. Maybe he's a part of that. Maybe we have, misjudged exactly how big of a role Clyde Edwards-Helaire has versus Darrell Williams. And he's going to come in, pretty cheap down there at a price tag of $1,800. So I like an idea that gets him in there. And then maybe that lets us pay up for one or more additional pass catchers there on the Kansas City side.
Yeah, David, what do you make of the rest of your roster if you take both quarterbacks and Fuller in the captain spot? And if, let's say, Brandon Cooks misses the game, would that take you off of Fuller? Because I feel like that would make him probably the highest owned captain at that point if Cooks doesn't play. Or if he's so banged up that, he's playing, but he's like a game time decision, then no one's going to want to take him.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point with him getting more popular if, Cooks goes out. But I think that more people would also be trying to focus in on these Kansas City guys, too, because everyone wants to, play the shiny Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, that haven't got a game in yet so far this season. So I think the spread's a little bit high. I think the total's a little bit high. I think this could be closer than people think. I mean, you could have a Super Bowl hangover, but look, we need to get, like Justin said, another Kansas City Chief in this lineup for sure. So we're going to have to spin down. So if we're not going to be able to take Tyreek Hill because Tyreek Hill's too expensive, then we're going to have to hope that Tyreek Hill busts. And if Tyreek Hill busts, that means another wide receiver from the Kansas City side is going to have to get in the end zone because they're going to score points. Last season, week one, it was Sammy Watkins. I think it's going to be McCole Hardman this time at 5,200. He is really looks like he's taken a step up in the offseason. You're hearing good things out of camp and out of the practices now about McCole Hardman. He is fast, just as fast, almost as Tyreek Hill, maybe faster. I'd have to look it up. I know he's quick. I know he can get targeted a lot. You can go back and look at what he did last season. He had some big games and mostly letdowns, but now he's taken another step up. I like him better than Watkins, and I think we go with that. Tyreek Hill's going to bust. Kelsey might not get as many touches. Usually, too, I'll point out that if you have Tyreek Hill and Kelsey on the same team, those two don't really correlate that well either. I noticed that last year. Usually one of them goes off, one of them takes a step back. It's Tyreek Hill taking a step back and go with McCole Hardman this time.
Justin, what do you make of that idea of trying to figure out the different ways to get some of these Chiefs receivers in, whether Hardman's obviously the big play guy. He's still going to be returning kicks too. You could double dip with that Kansas City defense or just potentially luck into one, although it'd be bad for your Patrick Mahomes. You want him throwing it to McCole Hardman in order to get those points. But what about someone who's like good once every three of like every 16 games? DeMarcus Robinson all of a sudden comes out of nowhere, or is that getting too cute at 2,200?
No, it's not getting too cute. And especially here early in the season, let's be careful about how much we think we know about any of these players and what their roles are going to be. Let's come into this a bit more open-minded and understanding like, hey, maybe Demarcus Robinson is actually still playing ahead of Mecole Hardman. It's possible. I like what I saw from Mecole Hardman last year, but if Andy Reid likes Demarcus Robinson, guess what? He's going to get the snaps. So, being really careful about that. And, I think one way that I'm sort of approaching this slate is with a David Johnson captain lineup and thinking about what that means. Now, I'm sort of talking out of two sides of my mouth here because I just told you that the Chiefs are going to dominate. So that's going to affect game script. That obviously wouldn't be good for David Johnson, but we know that David Johnson has a chance at being sort of, a multi-talented, multi-use back in this offense. Now, obviously, Duke Johnson is probably the more skilled pass catcher between the two, or at least he's more, plugged into that role. However, what we can do with the David Johnson captain lineup really opens things up for us because now we're not married to Deshaun Watson anymore. And by not marrying ourselves to Deshaun Watson, we opened up a lot of salary and we open ourselves up to a lot more Chiefs possibilities. So if we're thinking that, whatever production the Texans have comes through David Johnson, which is still very much a possibility. And the fact that he'll be lower owned than a player like Will Fuller probably makes him really, really attractive. He's priced down there with the backup quarterbacks. Like he belongs priced higher than that, and he's not. So let's take advantage of that. Throw David Johnson in the captain spot, throw Deshaun Watson out the window, and we're going heavy Chiefs onslaught after that.
David, we talked about telling yourself a story you can tell yourself a story that Houston just wins this game. And if that's the case, let's say they end up winning this game 28-24. Now you need David Johnson to luck into a few touchdowns here. If he can score 2 of the 4 touchdowns and you have him as your captain, you can still have all this comeback with the Chiefs, and hopefully everything that they do is through the air. It's not a likely story, but when you think about like giant tournament mentality, you're playing against 175,000 other people trying to win $1 million. Sometimes do you tell yourself, hey, here's what I think is going to happen. Here's what most people think is going to happen. I see the Chiefs, they're -10. Here's how they score all their points, and here's how Houston tries to catch up. Do you think about the other side like, hey, when you think about the percentages, this is still an NFL game. Houston's probably going to win this game, 15% of the time, maybe 20% of the time, especially in the very first game of the year when we don't know what's going on, that you tell yourself the story that not necessarily you think is going to happen, but no one else is on that side either. By doing Texans running game, I feel like you box out so much of the field that if you hit, you're actually kind of live to win at that point.
Yeah, I like what Justin's saying here too. That's just certainly another good way to script this, because if Houston gets up, I can guarantee you that they don't want Patrick Mahomes on the field. So they're just going to keep trying to run it play after play, get the first down, work it down, get it to where they can kick it in, get the defense out there 3 and out. So look, if Kansas City's not going to win this game, you're going to take a real hard look at the Houston defense, because no one's going to own the Houston defense. They're going to be virtually unowned because no one wants to go against Kansas City. But I'll tell you something too. Even if Kansas City puts up 14, 21 points on the Houston defense, all it takes is a fumble recovery, maybe a pick 6 for them to get right back in there and be in the winning lineup at such a cheap price. People get scared of these defenses. I wouldn't recommend you playing a quarterback against your defense, but you can use a couple players from it, because really it doesn't take much. Even sacks you get points for on DraftKings. So if they can start stacking those up against a team that we really don't know how they're going to come out. I know they won the Super Bowl. I know they're supposed to be great, but this is the NFL. We see it all the week. Everyone's about to get reminded about it again. Upsets happen a lot, and people who you don't think are going to win Super Bowls or win big games, and they win Super Bowls. So
Justin, if you weren't mass multi-entering these tournaments with a bunch of lineups and you were playing the 1 or 2 or 3, but you still wanted to play in the giant GPPs, would it just be pure contrarian strategy at that point, knowing that that gives your 1 or 2 lineups the actual best chance of winning if things break your way?
Yeah, unless you actually want to have like a pretty enjoyable experience watching the game where you actually have like a really good lineup that has like a chance at min cashing or something. And that could be kind of fun, right? Like you're just like watching the bubble move up and down the slider. That's kind of fun. But no, if you want a true differentiated chance at winning this thing and a positive EV lineup, yeah, I think some of the strategies we hit on before, such as, getting a little bit contrarian. Think about, could the underdog win this game? And what does that look like? That David Johnson lineup would be a great example there. or leaving salary on the table. Like I just constructed this lineup as we're talking, which is a David Johnson captain. It's Pat Mahomes with Travis Kelce. It also has Mecole Hardman. So we're fading Tyreek Hill. We're saying those receiver targets and touchdowns go to Mecole Hardman. And then we're double running backing it from Kansas City with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darrell Williams. And, that's one of those that you look at after the thing and you're like, man, that's not even a good lineup. It has two running backs from the Chiefs. How does that pay off? Well, like what does Darrell Williams have to do to pay off at 1,800? Not a ton, right? He just has to let you get to all those other pieces that absolutely smash. And so if that's what we can do in this situation, like that's a great lineup. It's a perfect tournament lineup, and it leaves $1,000 left over. So I know I'm probably not going to dupe it with anybody, and that's a great thing too.
David, do you think that there's any viability to the playing Deshaun Watson, not necessarily as your captain, or maybe as your captain? I know we talked about no quarterbacks, but at least having some sort of weird core of the Texans alternates that we know that are probably going to be on the field, not 100% of the time, but like Randall Cobb, probably going to play 85% of the snaps, maybe 90. Maybe he'll be out there for all of them, and maybe he's a bigger red zone presence than you think. Like Deshaun Watson likes to call his own number around the goal lines, but he likes to hit Daniel Fells or Daniel Fells, Darren Fells, Darren Fells. Daniel Fells, that old guy from the Lions. D Fells is not there shouldn't be 3 of them in the league. That's not fair to me. So him, I know you bring in Akins and you re-sign all these guys that maybe Fells falls out of favor a little bit, but he was solid last year. It doesn't feel like anyone wants these Texans periphery pieces, and they're all really cheap, David.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's how you're going to win one of these, right? I think Randall Cobb is a really good play, actually. I mean, he's going to be starting anyways. If Cooks is out, he's going to be on the field a lot of the time with Will Fuller, and then you're going to have Kenny Stills and Kiki Kuchi coming in. And as far as the tight ends go for the Houston Texans, look, it's not going to be 100% Darren Fells every play. He's going to be mixed in with Atkins. They like them both. You might get Fells 60%, Atkins 40%. Again, like Justin's saying, we really don't know because it's the first game of the season. But, Atkins is supposed to get on the field here. So if you want to try and take a punt with him, that's going to differentiate you. The second team tight end, nobody's going to own him. He's a little more expensive than I thought he would be at $3,200 in the flex spot. So that's going to take some people off him too, when you could go to Darrell Williams for, half the price. And just doing something like that could get you up there in the captain spot or could get you up there in the winning spot. Super risky. He's going to need to catch a touchdown to pay that off, but it could happen because if everyone, say Cooks is out, Fuller's getting double teamed in the end zone because we all know it's coming. Randall Cobb can't get open, and Atkins happens to be the tight end that's in the game on the 5-yard line. Watson's either going to throw it in or just dump it off to him. So, again, be careful about taking too many of those punt plays on the same team, but taking one of those punt plays on your lineup is a good way to try and get to the top. That's usually what would win it for me last year.
All right. I think that will do it for our picks. I guess the last question I have for you guys about this game is that, Justin, if Brandon Cooks, now that there's a report he didn't practice today, this is going to put people off of Brandon Cooks completely. But if he plays, and even if he's a game time decision, I always like this strategy in for the Millionaire Maker slate on Sunday in football that you have the running back or the player that's 50-50 to play. But if he plays, you put him in. And all of a sudden, no one owns him anymore. And you run the risk that he sucks because he's hurt and comes out of the game early. But sometimes you just walk right into just a guy who's in a fantastic spot. And I would argue that Brandon Cooks is in a really good spot this week against a bad defense. He's still a big play guy. And now no one's going to own him. Would that actually put you on him at all, knowing that everyone's on Fuller and no one's on Cooks?
It's a perfect pivot. You couldn't ask for anything better in terms of tournament strategy to be able to swap two guys on the same team who play the same position. One's actually cheaper than the other one, and you get to do so at extreme ownership differential. If you tell me to set a line on this between who scores more points if they both play, Will Fuller or Brandon Cooks, it's going to be maybe 55-45 Fuller if I'm setting the line. So now you're telling me we can flip that coin that's 55-45 Fuller, and now the ownership differential is going to be 60% of the field on Fuller and 15% on Brandon Cooks. Like, that makes it super, super enticing. So that's one really small thing that's not even that much of an underdog that has to go right for us before we're actually like leapfrogging past tons and tons of entries. And by getting that one thing right, all of a sudden we're sitting green in the bubble and we're min cashing and working our way up from there.
David, do you think that Cooks will be the pivot play? And now that we've talked about it, maybe he won't be. But it does sound like Fuller, based on our conversation, will be the most popular, potentially captain, but just overall everyone's going to have him. And I do think that Darrell Williams is going to end up with a lot of juice here, especially if news comes out that it's not going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire 100% of the time, that there's rumors that it could be a split. Then everyone's going to use Williams. I would just say fade him at that point.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, hopefully no news like that comes out. I mean, people don't know how to play these things. That's why they're listening to your show right now to try and figure it out.
But I had to get you guys on the show because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think if they're going to take the shiny new toy with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they might not even hear the news that he might be splitting some carries. Look, he's going to be the workhorse back, but they're not going to run him into the ground. The rookie, the first game of the season, it's not going to happen. As far as your Brandon Cooks question, would that be the pivot for me? Everything Justin's saying makes total sense. I would make sure, what the injury is. We have seen games in the past where Cook just goes out there and kind of acts like a decoy and kind of hobbles through games. We need to make sure he is close to 100%. It's the first game of the season. If he's not 100%, don't play Brandon Cooks. Don't go out there and get him hurt the first game of the season. You got to be smarter about that if you're Bill O'Brien. As far as Will Fuller goes, I just know what Deshaun Watson does too much. I just know he's going to lock into that wide receiver one, which I'm very confident that Will Fuller is this wide receiver one, especially if Cooks is dealing with injury. And he's just going to target him as much as he can. He did it with Hopkins. He's going to do it with Fuller. He did it with Fuller when Hopkins was out. To me, it's going to be Will Fuller. And, of course, I'm going to sprinkle some Cooks in, but I'm going to probably be a little overweight on Fuller. That's how confident I am in him this week.
All right. I love it. Thanks, guys. So, again, you can catch David on Mayo Media Network every Thursday, or probably every Wednesday, for the Thursday night football contest, breaking down the DraftKings slate. It's not going to be a 45-minute show like this. We're going to keep it snappy and get you with all the picks, all the different options that you can go through. Justin is going to be for the Monday night football game talking about the DraftKings slate. Justin, I want to throw the floor to you. Give the pitch to the people where they can find all of your work, where they need to subscribe, because we need to go support all the friends at the Mayo Media Network.
Absolutely. You've got to. So go check out Captain Spot on YouTube. You can go to cptspot.com and you'll have basically everything that I shill is right there at captainspot.com. So make sure you go check that out. We've got a lot of cool things. I just put out a new ebook related strictly to Showdown DFS. So if you've enjoyed the things that we have talked about here tonight, I teamed up with a couple guys over at Occupy Fantasy who do a great job. Brian Jester, who's $1 million Super Bowl winning champion here in Showdown, and he and I teamed up and we wrote this thing, and it's excellent. If you've ever wanted to know anything about lineup combinations, contest selection, whatever, it's all in that ebook. So you can find that over at cptspot.com. And all my writing this year is at numberball.com. So if you're interested in subbing there, make sure you go to that website as well.
All right. David Jones, you can find it at ftndaily.com. Not just doing NFL. He's got it all on the go, and you can catch him on Thursday nights, ftndaily.com. If you get a sub in the next week under code MAYO, which gives you a discount, you're eligible to have that sub for you and all your money given back. So just send me a screenshot on social media or email it to me, whatever. You can find me pretty easily, and you're going to be in that draw. But David, tell everyone what you are up to in terms of using the tools, all your content over at ftndaily.com.
I have been very, very impressed with everything that Kevin Adams and Jeff Radcliffe and all the guys over there have been able to put together. We have ftndaily.com. We have ftnfantasy.com for your season longs. We have ftnbets.com for the degens out there. We have a parlay calculator that will look up all the sports books and tell you where the best odds are to go take your bets. It's one of the best tools in the industry, and we just came up with the first ones with it. You got to go check that out. It is free. I am also the lead baseball analyst at FTN. So come over, sign up. You can talk to us in our Discord channel. You can ask the pros anything you want to. And yeah, use code Mayo, get some money off, and I will try and throw a couple people a dad hat. If you tag me on Twitter, I will try and throw you an FTN dad hat. We've got a big box of them.
And where?
Oh, and also
you got to tell people.
Sorry.
You got to tell people your Twitter handle on this one.
I know. That's the last part. Yeah, it's at Tenacious D Jones. At Tenacious D Jones on Twitter. Tag me. I'll try and get you a dad hat.
All right, David Jones, Justin Freeman, thank you both for being on. You can catch them on Mayo Media Network. Justin on Mondays, David on Thursdays. Boom. Hopefully you can win some cash on DraftKings Showdown this season. And remember, go support them, follow them, sub to Justin's YouTube channel. The support in the Mayo Media community goes a long way, so please help me out on that one. You can help me by smashing the like to the episode, going to ftndaily.com or ftnbets.com, using the code Mayo, and getting yourself a discount. Wouldn't want to miss out because you might get it for free when all is said and done. Also, rate and review the podcast, all right? Thank you all for watching. Good luck in the opening night. So pumped. Football's back. I know you are too. I've seen the numbers. We'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!